All right, so today what we're going to do is learn the basic makeup of every tooth, and every single tooth has these parts. Whether we're talking about an anterior tooth, which is a front tooth. Can somebody tell me how would we identify a front tooth from a back tooth based on what you know right now? Yes, Sarah.
The back teeth are for liquid grinding, and the front teeth are more for grinding.
Yes, you got something to add to that? Okay, you got something to add? Okay, so what we've heard is that the back teeth are for chewing and grinding. The front teeth are for cutting or tearing. So we should see a difference in the way they look, right? The front teeth don't have a flat chewing surface. The back teeth do. The front teeth are called anterior. The back teeth are called posterior. She also said that when we count the anterior teeth, we go 3 from the midline, and that every quadrant represents the same teeth as we move from the midline back. Do you remember us talking about that? Mm-hmm. All right. So now we're kind of totally getting away from that, and we're just talking about a tooth in general. So you can see that this tooth doesn't have a flat chewing surface, does it? So what kind of tooth is this? Mm-hmm. Anterior. It's got a ripping and tearing point, doesn't it? When we see this tooth, this is the part that you would see visible in the mouth. Does anybody happen to know what that part is called? Huh? I'll bet you do. The crown. You ever heard of that? Okay. The crown of the tooth. The crown of the tooth is the part that's visible in the mouth. And anybody know what this part's called? The root. The root. The root is on fire. Oh, just kidding. Okay. Entertaining myself once again. All right. So there are 2 basic parts of the tooth. The crown and the root. Now let's look at a posterior tooth. Same thing, right? This is the crown. It's the part that you would see in the mouth. It's the part that if it had a flat chewing surface would have it, right? And the part embedded in the bone is called the root. Okay. So first of all, we're going to label our paper. This part right here is called the what? Crown. I guess I need a marker that works. Crown. And the part that it's embedded down into the bony socket? Root. Okay. Will you put those on a piece of paper, and I'm going to have you take these few notes. We're going to give a couple facts about every part that we learned. But I would like you to put your fact on a piece of paper instead of on your little sheet here. All right. So the crown. Trying to find it. It is the part of the tooth which is normally visible in the mouth.
You said you want to write the definition on it.
Yes, please, because this one we're just labeling and we're going to color it. But on a separate sheet of paper, put parts of the tooth, and number 1 is crown. And you're going to put that. So the crown is what we normally see in the mouth. So you see all my crowns. As a matter of fact, even if I put a covering over it, those coverings are still called crowns, aren't they?
Yeah.
Some people call them caps, but the real word is a crown because it's the visible part of the tooth. Now, anybody have a mom, dad, grandma, grandpa that you kind of see some of their root too? They smile and you see some crown and some root because their bone has kind of pulled away and their gums have kind of pulled away. You probably will see it after today, all right? If they have had any kind of periodontal disease and their bone has resorbed or pulled away, you will see part of the root too. That doesn't make the root part of the crown. It's just saying normally the part you see that's healthy in the mouth is the crown. All right, fact number 2. So that's fact number 1. Fact number 2 is it is covered with something called enamel. It is covered with enamel. So let's make a card for crown. We will have to identify that as a term. And I'm going to give you exactly what the test says for crown. Portion of the tooth covered by enamel. Now this covering of the crown is so hard that you can get a permanent tooth in at age 9 or 10 and it can last you until you're 110. That's pretty darn hard stuff, isn't it? And think about all the pressures that go on in your mouth on a daily basis. Hitting when you chew, grinding and snapping, and hot and cold extremes, right? This enamel is the hardest substance in the body. It has to be the hardest substance because we've got teeth that have to last maybe 100 years, right? So enamel, if you think about the enamel paint, say that covers a tub, not a plastic one, but it's really hard. You could drop something and it wouldn't chip, right? There's enamel in some, but not the body kind of enamel, but if you think of enamel paint that you put on your fingernails, there's the stuff that's not so good, and then there's the stuff that's real hard. Well, this is the hardest substance in the body. It's meant to withstand hot, cold, pressure, grinding. Think of the things you do to your teeth that abuse them. Before we stop to get pictures, we are going to make a card for enamel. And I'm actually going to have you add this to the back of your card and to your notes. Okay, so your next thing under crown, you're going to put enamel. And the fact about enamel is it covers the crown. That's fact 1. And fact 2 is it is the hardest substance in the body. So fact 1, fact 2, even though on terminology we put them together. It covers the crown, and it is the hardest substance in the body. When we get to the book version of this, you'll find that enamel lays itself out like rods. Have anybody ever seen a crystal rod? It's like very dimensional and very hard. Like if you see a crystal from down in the ground like a rod, it is serious. And they lay on top of each other and make a super, super hard structure. When people say, oh, I was always told my family has soft teeth. Nobody has soft teeth. Enamel is hard. But what you might have is something that happened to disrupt that building of those rods. And you'll read in the book how there can be kind of twists in it where that allows a little more decay to happen, or maybe they didn't lay as hard and strong, or maybe your enamel's a little thinner than, say, somebody else's. But everybody has enamel, and everybody has the strongest substance in the body covering the crown of your tooth. All right, let's go ahead, and we are going to take about 5 minutes. Yes? Actually, we're making a new section that is parts of the tooth. Okay? And if with your flashcards you want to keep it with dentition, it would go okay with there. Now let me remind you, when we make a section in the notebook, let's say you don't get what dentition is, then call it whatever so you can find that paper. Because when we do a notebook check, I just say, I'm looking for this packet. And I go, you got 1 minute to turn to that packet in your notebook. So, is it in a section that you understand that you could find that in a minute? All right? We are going to stop at that point and come back. Okay, so we're going to pick back up. So we learned the main part of the tooth that's visible in the mouth is called the crown. It's covered with enamel. Somebody give me a fact about enamel. Yes. Kayla.
It's the hardest substance in the body.
Hardest substance in the body. And you know there's some hard substances, right? The very hardest substance in the body. What's another fact about enamel? Yes. Covers the crown. Good. All right. Now, the one thing that we couldn't say is that enamel is the visible portion, because some enamel actually goes down under the gum line too. All right. When I floss my teeth, my floss actually goes a little bit farther, doesn't it? And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So, the second part of the tooth is called the root, and you're going to label that. One fact about the root that you're putting on a separate sheet of paper. Kayla, would you mind making sure she's not putting these notes on her paper and she's got a separate sheet? Thank you.
Yeah, she wrote it down on a separate sheet.
Great. It helps hold the tooth in place in its bony socket. It helps hold the tooth in place in its bony socket. And guess what? It's covered with the second hardest substance in the body. Well, there's argument on there's two substances that are similar in hardness. So it is covered with something called cementum. Covered with cementum. You know, if you think about cement, it's something that's like hardens and holds strong, right? So wouldn't you think that the root would need something that is hard and holds strong? So if that helps you remember it, enamel is the hardest substance. Obviously, it's the part in the mouth because it takes the most abuse. And then cementum is hard and strong to hold the tooth in the bony socket. Now, when we talk about a bony socket, if you lost a tooth or you got a third molar extracted or something, you'd see a hole like this, wouldn't you? So understand that the tooth itself is different than the bone it's embedded into, right? There is a socket that is made just perfect for that tooth to fit in. So these they're not the same. One is the bone that holds it and one is the tooth. So when we talk about parts of the tooth, it's if you pulled that tooth out, this is parts of that tooth, all right? So this particular thing here, you can't really see it, but there's a thin layer of enamel around there, okay, on the crown. And then there's a real thin layer around the root. It's not as strong as enamel, okay? Now, if I look at that without seeing that nerve inside, I see that the main material here is what makes up what we call the bulk of the tooth. So let's picture this like an ice cream cone, all right? The cone is the cementum, all right? The dip on top of the ice cream is enamel. You with me, like a chocolate dipped ice cream? So the cone would be covering the material here, and then the dip would be covering this, but underneath it's all ice cream, right? This is called dentin, and dentin makes up the whole tooth and then is covered with enamel or cementum. Okay, so when we say it makes up the bulk of the tooth, it is what the tooth is, it's just got these other coverings. All right, let's make a card for root. We're also going to make one for cementum. I'm trying to find it. Don't know where cementum went. And root is the part of the tooth that is embedded into the socket and generally not visible. Generally not visible. Trying to find the cementum one. Okay, since I can't find my flashcard, I'm going to try to make this big for you. You're going to make a card for cementum. Let me make one up real quick. So you just spell cement with U-M, like that. Okay, and the definition for cementum is the hard covering surrounding the dentinal portion of the root. So it's the covering of the root. Yes. Yes, I'm sorry. So we said dentin is what makes up the tooth itself. And then it's got a hard covering that's the hardest substance on the part that we see, that we chew with, and that's called enamel. And the root is covered with something called cementum. Now we're going to make a, is everybody done with this? Anybody still need it? We're going to make a card for dentin. Dentin. D-E-N-T-I-N. Dentinol. Like A-L at the end. Do you need something back there? Okay, great. We're going to go back to dentin, but I want to make a card now while we're talking about it. Dentin is the main tooth substance and makes up the bulk of the tooth. So basically your tooth is dentin. It's just got some hard coverings on it. And then it's got a living part in the middle. Dentin is not as strong as enamel or cementum. Yes.
Oh, can I get a trick?
Yes.
What's for the dentin one in the dentition or into the...
No, dentin is a part of the tooth. Yeah. All right, we good? So on your side sheet of paper, I'm going to put a couple facts about dentin and cementum, And I don't want you putting it on your paper like I am, okay? So the crown is covered with enamel. We've got the 2 facts about enamel. Did I give you the 2 facts about enamel?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then we've got cementum. And it is the hard bone-like covering of the root. Pardon me? This is your notes. We already made a card with just the definition, right? Did we make a card with the definition?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. This is notes on, on the side that we're making about 2 key facts about everything. What? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. You don't write it on the picture. You write it on your separate sheet. Yeah. Okay, so that's fact number 1. Cementum is a hard bone-like covering of the root. Fact number 2. It serves as an attachment. Serves as an attachment for another part called the periodontal ligament. And we aren't talking about that today, but I want to get it on your notes. Do you see where I have periodontal? It's one word. That's just because I had to split it up to go down to the next line. Periodontal is one word. So it serves as an attachment for the periodontal ligament. And we made a card for cementum, or we did not?
We did.
We did, okay. Oh, I just found it. Really? Guess what? I think it was a lot easier than what I gave you. On the test, it's going to say the hard covering of the root. So if you want to adjust your card, that's all it needs to say. Hard covering of the root. It was right in front of my face. Really? So once you're done with that, we're going to turn the page. And I want you actually know this, and you know that, and you know that, and you know that, but you don't know that yet. So will you label what you know?
You said we don't know what?
You don't know this middle part. But this part here that goes all the way around, you know that. And you know this covering, and you know, actually there's no line to that first covering. You see that very first covering right here of the root? Go ahead and draw a line to that and label it. So what is this main part? Crown. What's the other main part? Root. What's the part that's visible in the mouth? That's covered with enamel. So the crown is covered with enamel. What is the root covered with here, that first layer? Cementum. And then what makes up the bulk of the tooth, all these lines? Dentin. Good job. Okay. Will you cover enamel yellow? And remember, we stop right there where the tooth goes down into the socket, right? Because then that substance changes.
You said the enamel.
The enamel. Yeah. Pardon me?
Is the color yellow, right?
Yellow. Is enamel yellow? Well, kind of, but we just picked a color so that you can tell the difference. Let's color the cementum blue. Now will you look, I don't want you to color the wrong thing. It's this first layer closest to the root. Do you see it? And it actually stops here and picks up there because there's actually a nerve that goes through the tip of the root. So take a look. I'm going to color blue this whole first layer here. It goes all the way up and meets the enamel at the neck of the tooth. Do you need colored pencils? No? You got them?
Oh, no.
You can borrow mine today. Okay? So this gives us a visual. Let's go ahead and, what's a contrasting color? Not red. Let's do green for all of Denton. So, this bulk of the tooth where all these funny lines are, and you can look at mine for an example, is all Denton. It's kind of like the ice cream cone with the ice cream inside. Don't color that middle section though. That's the caramel inside, or the hot fudge in the center of the drumstick. So we've got the two main parts of the tooth is the crown and the root. The crown is covered with enamel. The root's covered with cementum. Underneath it all is this substance called dentin. What? Yeah, isn't it fun? Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Do you want us to color light green or I can't tell this like.
You just want a contrasting color so you can tell the difference between the blue and the green. So I mean, and does green really matter? No, I just picked a color. Let's go back to our first picture then. This doesn't have the bone around it. Can you color yellow the enamel and blue the cementum and green the dentin? By the way, what if I flip this picture upside down? Could you tell?
Yeah.
Because this is a mandibular tooth, isn't it? Because the root's going down. If I had the root going up, it'd be a maxillary tooth. Yes, Mia? Yes. And we're basically just going to the front page when we're done with this and coloring those same parts. This tooth that we're looking at, is it anterior or posterior?
Anterior.
And how did you know that, Lily? Because the crown, what about it? Can you tell me more? It is sharp and cutting, isn't it? It doesn't have a flat chewing surface. Good. Lily, is it maxillary or mandibular as it's here? Mandibular, because the root's going down, right? So let's take a look here. Who could tell me what kind of tooth that is? Yes. Posterior, because it's got that flat chewing surface. What if I did, which it wouldn't be, but what if I did that? It'd be posterior, and which arch? Maxillary, because the roots are going up. So I don't want you to just get used to seeing mandibular teeth. All teeth have the same parts. Crown, root, enamel, cementum. So go ahead and color these parts. Color the enamel yellow, the cementum blue, and the dentin, which goes all the way around. You see those lines? That's why they put the lines like that. And when we do our homework in our book, it talks about lines of Retzius and lines of Schrager, and it talks about, these are sort of similar to when a tree grows. Has anybody ever seen the rings of a tree?
Yeah.
Very similar in formation when the tooth forms, very much like the rings of a tree. You can't tell the age of the tooth by how many rings, though, like what a tree is like. And would you go ahead and label dentin, enamel, and cementum on this picture? So I'm going to say, okay, that's enamel. So we're getting practice, right? And that right there is cementum. And anywhere in there, that's dentin. And then I'm going to color those.
We're not coloring
You are. I just gave my pencils away, but you're coloring this yellow. You're coloring that blue. You're coloring all of that green. Blue cementum. Yes, the lining of the root. The lining of the crown we're doing yellow, and the bulk of the tooth we're doing green. So as a review, who can raise their hand and tell me what makes up the main structure of a tooth? Go ahead. Dentin. And can you tell me, Sarah, since I saw your hand too, could you tell me what covers the root?
The root.
Mm-hmm. Cementum. Good job. Can you tell me, Josh, what covers the crown? Enamel. Awesome. What part of the tooth is embedded in the bony socket? Tell me.
Is it the root?
It is the root. Yes. And what part is visible? Yes. The crown. Good job. And that's every tooth. There is no tooth in the mouth that doesn't have all those same features. Okay, we are done for the lesson today. You can stash that aside. We will come back to it in review tomorrow and add more. And remember, everything adds to the lesson before. So we always want to kind of look over that the night before we learn new.